All right, after that deadly holiday weekend in Chicago, we've got a response from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Good morning. Back at it in Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk, where you can always chime in live and local at 217-629-7970. Again, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here. You can also email me, bishoponair@gmail.com, or you can find me on all of the social media channels. Just search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that way. So yesterday we talked about the violence, where at least 11 people were killed and another 45 injured in the Memorial Day weekend in Chicago, and how that impacts the livability of the city and how it impacts tourism in the city. And we've heard from callers even in the city limits calling in and sharing their thoughts about safety in the city and how they feel. But you've got a statement that was released by Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, and he says that the violence that our city experienced, and this is a direct quote, is intolerable. He said it produced pain and trauma and devastated communities across Chicago, and my heart breaks for everyone affected. That's why, as mayor, Johnson said, he's committed to leveraging every single resource at our disposal to protect every single life in our city. But again, those numbers after the Memorial Holiday weekend came after a taxpayer-funded initiative to bring about peacekeepers throughout the city seems to have really not done the job that maybe it could have done. Because the numbers that we saw from the shootings and the murders that happened, it was the highest number since the 2015 Memorial Day weekend, where 12 people were killed. But Johnson goes on to say that the holiday weekend, there were thousands of police officers, first responders, city workers, business leaders, organizers, faith leaders, and violence interrupters tirelessly dedicated themselves to keeping Chicago safe. And he offers his deep gratitude to all those involved. We have much more work to do, but the work performed by these individuals this weekend is the foundation for how we ultimately secure safety together. Again, this is a statement from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday, sharing his thoughts about the holiday violence. Now, the statement didn't come until probably about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And a lot of people were looking for some kind of statement from him earlier in the day on Tuesday after that long Memorial Holiday weekend. But Johnson heralding the efforts of the so-called peacekeepers, again, more than 250 grassroots organizations across 25 communities, dozens of so-called peacekeepers that were ultimately given grants to go and try to interdict violence, to try to get out on the streets and stop violence from happening. But one of those workers was involved in a robbery, allegedly being arrested. And we chatted with Tio Hardiman briefly yesterday, one of my teammates, Andrew Hensel. And Tio Hardiman is he's with the group Violence Interrupters, and he said that there's a ton of issues here that need to be addressed and needs to have certain types of approaches taken to really deal with what's going on. Here's just some of what Tio Hardiman had to say about the issue of Chicago violence over the weekend.
The violence was all over the place throughout the city of Chicago, and that goes to show you there's no rhyme or reason. It's just some people just believe that violence is the only way out for them.
Hardiman continues with some of his thoughts.
If we don't address this epidemic of gun violence as a public health emergency or public health issue, we may miss the opportunity to really change the landscape, overall.
And there's also the idea of law enforcement and how they are impacting crime. And should some policies be changed? Should they be allowed to actually go after people? Should they, for instance, prosecute to the fullest extent? Or should they continue, law enforcement in Cook County, with the policies of what some say is criminal justice reform to, allow for no cash bail for certain crimes, or to not be more strict in how they prosecute certain crimes. These are obviously things that are compounding all of this. Here's Tio Hardiman with more thoughts on the Chicago violence.
Put it like this. Some of the policies with law enforcement need to change, like you cannot chase nobody in the car. You cannot chase nobody on foot. those policies really need to be reversed.
And we've even heard from Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart, who says some of these other things need to be reversed, like the electronic monitoring and allowing for individuals who are under that type of monitoring to have 2 days worth of kind of, days to take care of personal business. Even Tom Dart seems to be acknowledging that that's causing some problems here. And the problems are people are abusing that. And it's ultimately leading to them committing crimes while they're supposed to be on some kind of electronic monitoring. So there seems to be a little bit of a sea change here when it comes to the approach that law enforcement should take to deal with the epidemic of crime in Chicago. Again, final word here from Tio Hardiman in response to the violence over the weekend.
But a good majority of the gun violence in Chicago is interpersonal conflict. So peacekeepers are usually deployed when you have war going on. But how do you get inside of interpersonal conflict? A whole different type of scenario or situation you have to work with.
So it's a very dynamic situation. Each case is different, but ultimately you have Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson saying that, the city had a lot of visitors and a lot of Chicagoans enjoyed the beach. They enjoyed festivals and other events. However, he says, quote, tragically, too many others were unable to enjoy the city. But, Johnson says, I know none of us will rest until every Chicagoan can safely enjoy our beautiful city and what it has to offer. So Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, first Memorial Day holiday weekend, seeing numbers that haven't been seen since 2015 with the number of people killed and injured in shootings. I wanted to revisit that a bit here and also highlight how it's not just in Chicago. You've got this spilling out elsewhere into the suburbs. There have been several festivals that have already canceled their festivals to essentially make sure that they don't have all of a sudden pop up flash mobs of sorts. You've seen this kind of matriculate outside of Chicago. And even at Six Flags, a couple of different reports here. Chicago Tribune headline is pepper spray used to disperse crowd after Six Flags fight. 4 police officers, 3 suspects injured. Witnesses told police that 2 groups of people began fighting near the front entrance of the park and that the altercation then spilled into a parking lot. The Chicago Sun-Times reports 6 teens being held. 4 cops hurt in Six Flags melee. 2 groups began fighting inside the theme park near the front gates around 7:15 p.m. Monday, and it spilled out into the parking lot where officers tried to intervene. So obviously it's not just a Chicago issue. You've got the possibility of groups of people traveling even from outside of Chicago to other areas in the suburbs and committing violence, either against each other or other people being wrapped into that. So obviously it's a contentious issue. How do we get a hold of it? Is it indeed reversing some of the policies that have been put in place? As you heard Tio Hardiman outline, just the idea of police not being able to go after suspects, that's a problem.
Put it like this. Some of the policies with law enforcement need to change, like you cannot chase nobody in the car. You cannot chase nobody on foot. Those policies really need to be reversed.
And then Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart wanting to see some changes to the provision allowing for individuals who are on home confinement to have a certain number of hours of taking care of personal business and how that could actually lead to even more problems. Will there be a recognition? I know on the House floor several weeks ago when they were recognizing that slain Chicago police officer, they had some Democrats say maybe it's time we take another look at penalty enhancements. Because too often they look at the suspect or those who are being charged with crimes and saying, oh, we don't want to enhance their penalties. It could lead them down a road of compounding their bad behavior or their situation, making it worse to where they have to commit violence to get on with their day or whatever it may be. But it seems there might be a sea change saying, okay, we're going to actually reevaluate our positions on these things. How long that's going to take, I don't know. Is it going to be able to turn things around before the next weekend or before the summer continues? Or are we going to see this slow progression towards reassessing criminal justice policies? We'll be tracking that because it's not just going to impact Chicago, it impacts other areas throughout the state. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. You can always call in live and local at 217-629-7970. Talk a little bit about some crime stats coming back next. All right, stay tuned. Yesterday, when we talked about the violence in Chicago, there was some callers about the different types of rates of violence, and some saying that the violent areas are also in red states, but we weren't talking about states. We were talking about municipalities. So I looked at some of the FBI crime stats, and it's kind of all over the place, really, when you get down to it. But the FBI has, at least from 2019, as their most recent crime stats. And just to take a look at some of this, you've got crime stats by region for the year that ended in 2019. And it breaks it down by, the Northeast, New England, and then it gives states, and then it breaks it down for the Midwest. It shows Illinois with the crime rate of 7.1% for murder per 100,000. So 7.1 per 100,000 in Illinois. But then you look at like Indiana, for instance, 6.2%. So it's less than Illinois. Ohio, 5.1%. Again, less than Illinois. You look at Iowa, it's 2.2 per 100,000. I should be saying per 100,000, not percent. So that's the murder rate, just at least in the Midwest, and comparing states to states. But the crime data, it goes even further. All states as part of this, and again, these are 2019 numbers. Missouri has a 9.8 per 100,000 murder rate, and you could probably attribute a lot of that to the St. Louis and Kansas City areas. So go through this if you get a chance. It's rather fascinating. It's kind of a mixed bag when it comes to which states, and you can look at the politics of that state and whether or not it's the state politics or if it's the city politics that are really driving this. But even the FBI stats go really deep into each individual city, and you can find those statistics through the FBI's website and have a field day just looking at all of the different statistics. For instance, crime trends, suburban versus non-suburban cities. You can break that down, and you can really see there seems to be a peak when it comes to cities that are of a larger size, including more than 400,000 or so. And you can see the murder and non-negligible homicide rates for cities between 500,000 to a million, 12.5 for the rate. And as you go further down on the population, of course, it decreases quite a bit. So it does seem to be that larger cities just overall are an issue. But then you can look at, state by state, and even within Illinois, you can break down all of the city's crimes that were reported for 2019. But all of that's with a grain of salt, because even in Chicago, we've reported on this in the past, they don't always report everything out to the FBI. Cities across the state don't report everything out to the FBI. There's different reporting standards, and I know that there's been an effort to try to make that more universal and more conform with everybody, so that you're looking at the same types of data instead of comparing apples to oranges. But obviously, this is just an overview, and it should give you at least a sense of how these various areas throughout the country are dealing with their crime rates. So give that a look. FBI crime stats. Again, that's only for 2019, and you got to pour through a whole bunch of spreadsheets and different charts and different graphs, but it should give you a little bit of a sense of maybe where some of the hot spots are when it comes to violent crime throughout the country, but also throughout Illinois. All right, so check that out with the FBI's website, and you can have a field day. Just get some coffee and maybe some light ambient music in the background. I suggest listening to Aphex Twin. Selected ambient works whenever you're pouring through spreadsheets. It just helps it kind of go through more and more, but that's just my prerogative. All right, plenty more to get to here at Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and